Okay, so today we are diving deep into something that's really crucial if you're running a Shopify store, and and you want more customers to be able to find you online, and that is technical SEO.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of like, if you think about like a building, you need to have good foundation before you can, build anything on top of it.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
So technical SEO is like the foundation of your store's online presence. So it's kind of like the stuff that most customers don't actually see, but it's what allows Google and the other search engines to discover your store, understand what it's all about, and then rank it so that when people search for products like the ones that you sell, they actually find you.
Exactly. It's about making sure that all of the technical elements are working smoothly behind the scenes so that your store can really shine online.
Right. And you could have the most beautiful store, the most amazing products in the world, but
Yeah.
if you haven't got your technical SEO nailed down, then nobody's even going to find you.
Exactly. It's kind of like having a beautiful storefront tucked away on a hidden side street when nobody ever walks by.
Right.
Exactly.
You need to be on the main street, and technical SEO is how you get there.
Exactly.
Awesome. So what we are going to do in this deep dive is we are going to go through all the most important technical SEO elements for Shopify stores specifically, and give you some practical tips and things that you can start doing right away to improve your own store's SEO.
Yeah. And to do that, we've been looking at this super useful guide called How to Do Technical SEO for a Shopify e-commerce store.
Yes, it's a really great guide. It's got so much useful information in it.
Definitely.
So I think that the first thing we should probably talk about is site speed, because who likes a slow website?
Yeah, nobody likes a slow website, and Google doesn't either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Google actually uses site speed as one of the ranking factors in its algorithm. So if your site is slow, it's actually going to affect your ranking in the search results.
Yes, like imagine you're searching for something online and you click on a link and the page takes like forever to load. What do you do?
Yeah, just go back and click on a different link.
Exactly. Nobody's got time to wait for a slow website these days, so it's really important to make sure that your site is as fast as possible.
Totally. And the first thing that the guide talks about in terms of site speed is the importance of choosing a fast Shopify theme.
Right. And when they talk about a fast theme, they mean a theme that's built with clean and efficient code, so it doesn't have a lot of unnecessary bloat that can slow things down.
Right. They actually mention a couple of specific themes as good examples. Dawn and Symmetry. Have you heard of those?
Yeah, they're really good. They're really popular too. They're known for being lightweight and fast.
Cool. So if you are currently using a Shopify theme that's not very fast, then switching to one of these faster themes could be a good way to improve your site speed.
Definitely. I mean, even if you love your current theme, it's worth at least checking out some of the faster options and seeing if they would be a good fit for you.
Yeah, for sure. And the next thing that the guide talks about is compressing images.
Oh yeah, this is a big one because images are often the biggest files on a web page, and so if they're not properly compressed, they can really slow things down.
Right. And there are loads of tools out there that you can use to compress images without losing any of the quality. Like Tiny PNG is a popular one.
Yeah, Tiny PNG is great. And actually, Shopify has its own built-in image compression features as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can actually compress images directly in Shopify, which is really handy.
That's awesome. So there's no excuse really for having uncompressed images on your site these days.
Exactly.
And then another really cool technique that the guide talks about for improving site speed is lazy loading.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
So have you ever noticed how on some websites when you scroll down the page, the images kind of load in as you get to them rather than all at once?
Yeah.
That's lazy loading. And it basically means that the images only load when they are needed. So the initial page load time is much faster because the browser doesn't have to load all of the images at once.
Yeah, it's like a little trick to make the page feel faster because it loads the most important content first and then it kind of catches up with the rest as you need it.
Right, exactly. And this is something that you can usually enable in your Shopify theme settings.
Yeah, most themes have a setting for lazy loading.
Cool. And then another thing that can really affect your site speed is the number of apps that you have installed.
Yeah, every app that you add to your store adds a bit more code to your site, and that code can slow things down.
Right. And sometimes it's like, you install an app for one specific purpose and then you kind of forget about it and it's just sitting there slowing down your site.
Exactly. So it's a good idea to regularly review the apps that you have installed and see if you're actually using them. And if not, maybe you can get rid of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And if there's an app that you're not using that much, but you still need it, maybe you can find a different app that does the same thing, but it's more lightweight.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then the final thing that the guide talks about in terms of site speed is leveraging Shopify's built-in CDN.
Right. A CDN, or a content delivery network, basically helps to deliver your website's content to visitors from servers that are located closer to them geographically.
Right. So if your store is hosted in, say, the US, but you have customers in Europe, those customers are going to be able to load your site much faster if the content is being served to them from a server in Europe rather than having to travel all the way from the US.
Exactly. And the good thing about Shopify is that it has a built-in CDN, so you don't have to set up anything yourself.
Awesome. Okay, so that was site speed. Let's move on to another really important technical SEO element, which is duplicate content.
Yeah, duplicate content can be a real problem for SEO because it can confuse search engines and make it difficult for them to determine which version of a page they should rank.
Right. So for example, let's say you have a product that's in multiple collections on your Shopify store.
Yeah.
That product is technically going to have multiple URLs, one for each collection that it's in, and that could be seen as duplicate content by Google.
Right. And the same thing can happen if you have different versions of a page for different countries or languages.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we fix this?
Well, the good news is that Shopify automatically adds something called a canonical tag to all of your pages.
Okay, and what does the canonical tag do?
Basically, it tells Google which version of a page is the original or preferred version.
Right, so if Google sees that a page has a canonical tag pointing to the different URL, it knows that it should ignore that page and focus on the URL that's specified in the canonical tag.
Exactly. So it kind of solves the duplicate content problem for you.
That's awesome. But the guide does point out that you still need to be careful not to create duplicate titles and meta descriptions.
Yeah, definitely. Each page on your site should have a unique title and meta description that accurately reflects the content of that page.
Right, so even though Shopify is taking care of the canonical tags, you still need to make sure that your titles and meta descriptions are unique.
Exactly.
Okay, and then another thing that the guide talks about in relation to duplicate content is using clean URLs.
Right. So a clean URL is basically a URL that's easy for both humans and search engines to understand.
Right. So for example, a clean URL for a product page might be something like, your store.com/product name.
Right. Exactly.
So,
short, simple, and to the point.
exactly. And then on the other hand, a messy URL might be something like, your store.com/index PHP $product ID equals 12345.
Yeah, that's the kind of URL that you get when you're using a really old or poorly coded e-commerce platform.
Right. It's just like a string of random characters, and it's hard to understand what the page is about just by looking at the URL.
Exactly. So using clean URLs is not only good for SEO, but it's also good for user experience because it makes it easier for people to understand what they're clicking on.
Totally. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the robots.txt file.
Ah, yes. The mysterious robots.txt file.
So this sounds kind of technical, but it's actually a really simple file that can have a big impact on your SEO.
Yeah, basically the robots.txt file is a set of instructions for search engine crawlers.
All right, so search engine crawlers are basically like little robots that go around the internet and visit websites, and they index the content of those websites so that they can be included in search results.
Exactly. And the robots.txt file tells those crawlers which pages on your site they're allowed to crawl and which pages they should ignore.
Right. So, for example, you might want to block crawlers from accessing your store's admin pages or your checkout pages because those pages aren't really relevant for search results.
Exactly. And you can also use the robots.txt file to block crawlers from accessing pages that are under development or pages that you don't want to be indexed for other reasons.
Right. Okay. And so where do you find this robots.txt file?
So every Shopify store automatically has a robots.txt file, and you can usually find it by going to your store.com/robots.txt.
Okay, cool. And then the guide says that Shopify's default robots.txt file is usually fine for most stores, so you probably don't need to change anything.
Yeah, Shopify's done a pretty good job of setting up the default robots.txt file so that it blocks all the pages that you would normally want to block.
Right. But it's still worth taking a look at it just to make sure that it's doing what you want it to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's move on to another important file, the XML sitemap.
Right. The XML sitemap is kind of like the opposite of the robots.txt file. Instead of telling search engines what to ignore, it tells them what to pay attention to.
Right. So the XML sitemap is basically a list of all the pages on your site that you want search engines to crawl and index.
Exactly. And it also includes some additional information about each page, like when it was last updated and how often you expect it to change.
Right. And this information helps search engines to prioritize the pages that they crawl and index so that they can make sure that they're always indexing the most up-to-date content.
Exactly.
Okay. And so how do you create an XML sitemap for your Shopify store?
You don't have to actually. Shopify automatically creates an XML sitemap for you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you can usually find it at your store.com/sitemap.xml.
Okay. And once you found it, what do you do with it?
So the next step is to submit your XML sitemap to Google Search Console.
Okay. We haven't really talked about Google Search Console yet, but I guess this is a good time to do it.
Yeah, Google Search Console is basically a free tool that Google provides to help you monitor and manage your site's presence in Google search results.
Right. And one of the things that you can do in Google Search Console is submit your XML sitemap.
Exactly. And by submitting your sitemap, you're basically telling Google, hey, here's a list of all the pages on my site that I want you to index.
Right. And that helps Google to discover and index your pages more quickly and efficiently.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. So we've talked about sitemaps. We've talked about robots, TXT. Let's talk about broken links.
Oh, broken links.
Nobody likes a broken link. It's so frustrating when you click on a link and you get that 404 error page.
Yeah, it's like hitting a dead end.
Exactly. And it's not just bad for user experience. It's also bad for SEO because it tells Google that your site isn't well maintained.
Right. Google wants to see that your site is up to date and that all of the links are working properly.
So how do you find broken links on your Shopify store?
The easiest way is to use Google Search Console again.
Right. So Google Search Console actually has a report that shows you all the broken links that it has found on your site.
Exactly. And once you've identified the broken links, you can fix them by either removing the link or redirecting it to a different page.
Right. And Shopify makes it really easy to redirect links. You can do it right in your Shopify admin.
Yeah, it's super simple.
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about structured data or schema markup.
Okay, so structured data is basically a way of adding extra information to your web pages that helps search engines to understand the content of those pages better.
Right. And this can lead to those rich snippets that you see in search results, like when you see a product price or a star rating or availability information right there in the search results.
Exactly. Those rich snippets are powered by structured data.
Cool. And so how do you add structured data to your Shopify store?
Well, the good news is that Shopify automatically adds some basic structured data to your product pages. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you want to add more advanced structured data, you can use an app like Smart SEO or JSON LD for SEO.
Okay. And what kind of benefits can you get from adding more advanced structured data?
Well, it can help you to get more rich snippets in search results, and it can also help Google to understand your products better, which can lead to better rankings.
Right. So it's definitely worth considering.
Definitely.
Okay. So moving on, let's talk about mobile optimization.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one these days because more and more people are using their phones to shop online.
Right. Google actually uses a mobile-first indexing approach now, which means that they primarily use the mobile version of your site to determine your rankings.
Exactly. So if your site isn't mobile friendly, you're going to be at a big disadvantage.
Right. And the first step to making sure that your site is mobile friendly is to choose a mobile-friendly Shopify theme.
Yeah, most modern Shopify themes are responsive, which means that they automatically adjust to different screen sizes.
Right. So if you're using a responsive theme, then you're good to go. But it's always worth testing your site on different devices just to make sure that everything is looking good.
Yeah, definitely. And you can also use Google's mobile-friendly test to see how Google views your site.
Right. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about HTTPS security.
Okay, so HTTPS is basically the secure version of HTTP. It's the protocol that's used to encrypt communication between your website and your visitors' browsers.
Right. And it's become really important for SEO these days because Google actually gives preference to websites that are using HTTPS.
Exactly. And the good news is that Shopify automatically provides SSL certificates for all stores, so you don't have to set anything up yourself.
Awesome. But the guide does point out that you should make sure that all of the links on your site are using HTTPS as well.
Yeah, if you have any links that are still using HTTP, you should update them to HTTPS.
Right, and you can usually do this by just changing the URL from HTTP to HTTPS.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Okay, great. So let's move on to internal linking.
Right, so internal linking is basically the practice of linking from one page on your site to another page on your site.
Right, and it's important for SEO for couple reasons.
Yeah, first of all, it helps Google to discover all of the pages on your site.
Right. If Google can't find a page, then it can't index it.
Exactly. And second of all, it helps to pass link equity from one page to another.
Okay. And what's link equity?
Basically, link equity is a measure of how valuable a link is in terms of SEO.
Right. So a link from a high authority website is going to be worth more than a link from a low-authority website.
Exactly. And internal links can help to pass that link equity from your high-authority pages to your lower-authority pages.
Right. So, for example, if you have a blog post that's ranking really well in Google, you might want to link to that blog post from some of your product pages.
Exactly. And that will help to pass some of the link equity from the blog post to the product pages.
Cool. Okay, so we've talked about internal linking. Let's talk about Google Search Console and Bing Webmaster Tools again.
Yeah, so we talked about these tools earlier in the context of submitting your XML sitemap.
Right, but they can actually do a lot more than that.
Yeah, they are really powerful tools that can give you a ton of insights into your site's SEO performance.
Right, so for example, you can use Google Search Console to see which keywords people are using to find your site.
Yeah, and you can also see how your site is performing in the search results for those keywords.
Right, so you can see things like your average position, your click-through rate, and the number of impressions that you're getting.
Exactly. And you can also use Google Search Console to find and fix technical SEO issues on your site.
Right, so we talked about using it to find broken links, but you can also use it to find things like indexing errors or mobile usability problems.
Exactly. It's really a one-stop shop for all your SEO needs.
Cool, and then Bing Webmaster Tools is basically the Bing equivalent of Google Search Console.
Exactly. It does pretty much the same thing.
Right, so even though Google is the dominant search engine, it's still worth setting up Bing Webmaster Tools as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about pagination optimization.
Okay, so pagination is basically when you have a long list of products or blog posts and you split it up into multiple pages.
Right, so for example, if you have a collection that has 100 products, you might split it up into 10 pages with 10 products on each page.
Exactly. And the problem with pagination is that it can create duplicate content issues because all of the pages are going to have very similar content.
Right, so how do you fix this?
Well, the good news is that Shopify automatically adds rel next and rel prev tags to your paginated pages.
Okay, and what do those tags do?
Basically, they tell Google that the pages are part of a series and that they should be treated as one long page rather than multiple separate pages.
Right, so it kind of solves the duplicate content problem for you.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk about reducing JavaScript and CSS bloat.
Okay, so JavaScript and CSS are basically the code that makes your website look and function the way it does.
Right, and if you have too much JavaScript or CSS code, it can slow down your site.
Exactly. So it's important to make sure that your code is as clean and efficient as possible.
Right, and one way to do this is to use code minification.
Yeah, code minification is basically the process of removing all the unnecessary characters from your code, like spaces and line breaks.
Right, and this makes the code files smaller, which means that they load faster.
Exactly. And Shopify actually has some built-in features for code minification.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you can find them under settings and then theme and then edit code.
Okay, and if you need more advanced code minification, you can use an app like Boom SEO.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so let's move on to avoiding duplicate meta tags and titles.
Right. So we talked about this earlier in the context of duplicate content.
Right, but it's worth repeating because it's so important.
Yeah, every page on your site should have a unique title and meta description.
Right, and you can edit the titles and meta descriptions for your products in your Shopify admin under Products, and then edit Website SEO.
Exactly. And it's a good idea to use a template for your titles and meta descriptions so that they are consistent across your site.
Right, for example, you might use a template like product name, and then a dash, and then store name.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk about monitoring crawl errors with Google Search Console.
Right. So we've talked about Google Search Console a lot already, but it's really an essential tool for SEO.
Yeah, and one of the things that you can use it for is to monitor crawl errors.
Right. So a crawl error is basically when Google tries to crawl a page on your site and it can't access it for some reason.
Right, and there are a few different reasons why this might happen. The page might have been deleted, or it might be blocked by your robot's TXT file, or there might be a problem with your server.
Exactly, and Google Search Console will show you all of the crawl errors that it has found on your site.
Right, and it's important to fix these crawl errors because they can affect your SEO.
Yeah, if Google can't crawl a page, then it can't index it. Okay, so I think we've covered most of the main technical SEO elements for Shopify stores, but there's one more thing that I wanted to mention, and that's SEO apps.
Right, so there are a lot of different SEO apps available in the Shopify App Store.
Yeah, and some of them can be really helpful for automating tasks or providing additional insights.
Right, so for example, we've already mentioned Smart SEO and Boom SEO, but there are loads of others out there.
Yeah. And the best app for you will depend on your specific needs.
Right. But it's definitely worth exploring the different options and seeing if there's an app that can help you to improve your SEO.
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we've covered pretty much everything in this deep dive.
Yeah, I think so.
So just to recap, we've talked about the importance of site speed. We've talked about how to avoid duplicate content. We've talked about robots, TXT files, XML sitemaps, broken links, structured data mobile optimization, HTTPS, security internal linking, Google Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools, pagination optimization, reducing JavaScript and CSS bloat, avoiding duplicate meta tags and titles, monitoring crawl errors, and using SEO apps. I know it's a lot, but it's all really important stuff. And if you can get all of these things right, then you're going to be well on your way to ranking higher in search results and getting more traffic to your store.
Absolutely. It's all about creating a solid foundation for your store's online presence.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for you. What's one technical SEO element that you can focus on improving today?
Yeah, think about the things that we've talked about and pick one that you think would make the biggest difference for your store.
Right. Maybe it's something that you've been putting off, or maybe it's something that you've never even thought about before.
Either way, make a plan to start working on it today, and you'll be amazed at the results you can achieve.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been fun.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll catch you in the next one.
See you later.